with groundbreaking news and cutting-edge commentary, challenging your personal worldview and taking a deeper look into current events, politics, economics, and government. We bring you Trevor Thiessen with the Thiessen Report.
Alright everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Thiessen Report. I'm Trevor Thiessen, and I thank you for joining me today. Today I'd like to talk about fusion centers, and I want to talk a bit about what they are, the dangers of fusion centers, some of the reports that have been put out by fusion centers, and the little bit that's come out in the media. Going along further, here's another document which talks about the fusion center guidelines. I got this from the Homeland Security website. Did not make this up. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is what they produced. Okay? Now, this was a joint project, as I mentioned earlier, between the Homeland Security and the Justice Department, and they provide guidelines here for setting up fusion centers. Now, the weird thing about this, they really should have called it the Fusion Center Suggestions, because right at the beginning of the report here it says that Justice Department Homeland Security created this document, and in the same paragraph it says, and I quote, "The opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this document are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the U.S. Department of Justice or the U.S. Department of Homeland Security." So their departments created this, but it doesn't reflect their policies. So whatever, okay. The Fusion Center Suggestions, report, I guess you want to call it that. And of course, it goes on to say here that law enforcement, public safety, and the private sector, make a note of that, leaders are encouraged to embrace the guidelines in this report when establishing fusion centers or participating in one. And it goes on to list a bunch of different types of guidelines and things like that. The fusion centers, they are, well, here's what they do. In their own words, the fusion center process turns this information, the information that they gather, and intelligence into actionable knowledge. So the information that any one of these agencies that has an office in the fusion center and shares this information with other agencies, this is considered actionable intelligence or actionable knowledge. This is intelligence-based policing, basically. And it basically goes on to say a fusion center, in their words, is an effective and efficient mechanism to exchange information and intelligence, maximize resources, streamline operations, and improve ability to fight crime and terrorism by analyzing data from various sources. Well, that sounds reasonable. Of course, it's not just the police that are doing this. They are looking at participation from all different sectors in society, the private sector, education, emergency services, energy, government, postal and shipping, military, retail, social services, transportation, agriculture, and so on. So don't forget last week when I talked about Homeland Security and the See Something, Say Something program, where we all become a bunch of snitches and spy on everybody. This is, the Fusion Center is like it's like the crown jewel. It is the centerpiece of this type of operation. In fact, Janet Napolitano, head of Homeland Security, refers to the Fusion Center as the centerpiece for their intelligence gathering programs. So, just going on a little bit further here, they want to educate and liaise with elected officials, community leadership, and promote awareness of center operations. They want to gather information on people. Here it talks about driver's licenses, motor vehicle information, registration data, location information, and a few other bureaucratic details. So anyway, like I said, they have a number of different guidelines in here. Basically says what they are, but these aren't guidelines that really have to be followed strictly. Some of the other things that they mention here is, yes, we do want to balance constitutional rights with the need to gather information, but honestly, as we get further into this report, you'll see that that is more lip service than reality. So one of the next things I'd like to get into is the dangers of fusion centers. Remember I talked about Homeland Security? You know, it's set up to protect us from Muslim extremists. At least that was the pretext. But when you read their actual terrorism assessment report, they're targeting gun owners, you know, libertarians, pro-lifers, returning veterans, and so on. So it's set up under the pretext of one threat, but then they turn around and they use it for something else. And keep in mind, fusion centers are under the umbrella of Homeland Security and operating under the same direction, if you will. So, and here's an article right from their own website, State and Major Urban Area Fusion Centers. And it goes on to talk about the National Network of Fusion Centers. These are owned and operated by state and local entities, supported by the feds, funded by the feds, but basically run by the local authorities. So you don't have a really good system of accountability here. Washington throws money at it, but the local people run it. And they're made up of people from different departments who don't necessarily answer to each other. So you already have a formula or a system set up where there is a lack of accountability, and these fusion centers can operate relatively autonomously without much accountability. In fact, there really is no significant accountability or oversight. We'll comment on that later. It goes on to talk about here about the current threat environment and role of fusion centers in national security, and talks about how they want to leverage their information, how they want to work with, you know, local law enforcement and local entities, not just law enforcement, but, you know, like I said, Walmart or hotels, bus stations, train stations, you name it. So this is a very broad, expanded intelligence gathering system here. Like I said, there are now over 72 fusion centers, and this is a few years old probably, so there's maybe more now. Each one of them headed up by someone from the Department of Homeland Security Office of Intelligence and Analysis. So you have intelligence officers from Homeland Security, most likely in reality CIA people, who are quarterbacking each of these fusion centers. Further down it says that they want to, or they're going to talk about expanding the nationwide Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative. Let me say that again. Expanding the nationwide Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative. That is freaky. It says here, a nationwide Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative Program Management Office. So they've set this up to establish a standard process to identify and report suspicious activity in jurisdictions across the country. So you have a system for reporting suspicious activity that they want law enforcement to follow and that they want the public to follow. I don't know about you, but I find that particularly disturbing. As I mentioned earlier, this also includes the See Something, Say Something program that Janet Napolitano has been pushing. So that's just a few things right from the DHS website. Going on a little further here, another article here. Fusion centers to data mine suspect citizens. This is from Infowars.com, April 2008. Where basically, according to John Bird from Raw Story, the government is rounding up your cell phone numbers, insurance claims, credit reports, financial records, and the names of your associates and relatives, and sharing them with law enforcement and officials nationwide. Further down here, it says, documents obtained by the Washington Post's Robert O'Hara Jr. for Wednesday's paper reveal that the centers have information that now includes unlisted cell phone numbers, insurance claims, driver's license photos, credit reports, and even top secret data systems at the CIA. So here's the catch, and here's something you want to grab onto here, is that they're not investigating terrorists or crimes per se. They are data mining the public at large. They're collecting information on innocent citizens who haven't done anything. That's very different from investigating a particular crime and getting information from specific people. Now, this is data mining on civilians across the board. Okay? That's what's going on here. Another article that says basically very something similar here. State fusion centers and Pentagon run FBI programs that spy on Americans. There's a number of documents obtained by the ACLU and Washington Post. Not that I'm a big fan of ACLU, but I'll give credit where credit is due here. Where it basically says something similar. Access to personal information about cell phones, insurance claims, driver's license, credit reports from the Washington Post. It goes on to mention they also have subscriptions to private information broker services that keep records about Americans' locations, financial holdings, associates, relatives, firearms license, and the like. One of them that they mentioned here, one of these data brokers in Maryland called Intersect, claims to hold the records of about 98% of Americans. So this is a massive information gathering system that is collecting information on you, me, and everybody else. This isn't simply about investigating brown people with turbans or guys with ski masks robbing banks. This goes way beyond that. Okay? It goes on further here. Associated Press reports that the military is using the FBI to skirt legal restrictions on domestic surveillance to obtain private records of Americans' internet service providers, financial institutions, and telephone companies, according to Pentagon documents. Now, these documents were obtained by the ACLU after it sued the Department of Defense. And this was last year, well, a few years ago actually, for its withholding of information pertaining to national security letters which are used to force businesses such as internet service providers to overturn information on their customers without subpoena. So this is what's going on. Just in case you're wondering, it is illegal for the military to engage in domestic investigations, in case there was any wondering about that. So this I find quite disturbing, and this is several different sources being listed here. Both mainstream and alternative media have been reporting on this. Oh, here's another one. This is a real nice one. Another one from Infowars.com. Fusion centers implementing the control grid, where it talks about the Total Information Awareness Program. Now, this was a program that got some publicity a while ago, bad publicity, and was basically shot down by Congress. They unfunded it. Both the House and the Senate moved to cut funding from the program. But this program was just too good to let go of, and it basically was reborn when the Fusion Center initiative began. And keep in mind that the Total Information Awareness Program was created by the Department of Defense and DARPA. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. That's the arm of DOD that does all kinds of technical research. So there's a whole other program here that was shot down, but it's been brought back to life under the Fusion Center program. This is just too good to let them let it go away. Goes on to say here, the Washington Post reports the centers use law enforcement analysts and sophisticated computer systems to compile or fuse desperate tips and clues and pass along the refined information to other agencies. So anyway, there you have it. The Pentagon is involved in this as well. Just two more reports as far as the dangers go here. Napolitano reports to CFR on Stasi Snoop network. Now, the Council on Foreign Relations is, they're basically a globalist type of institution, and I'd like to share a little bit about that next.